and welcome to the Wizards Brew podcast. This is a podcast about deck building and good deck building theory. My name is Carl Jolm, and with me is my co-host, Daniel Nias.
Hello, I'm back.
Yes, finally back from the Invitational. How was it, by the way?
I don't want to talk about it. No, overall, I went 2-4 in the main event. I signed up for the Legacy event. I went 2-3 in draw, or 1-4 in drop because I just got completely crushed. So I didn't play Storm for a while, and I'm just like, I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna play Storm. That was the worst mistake I should have ever done. I should have been playing Legacy side events all day long, and I probably would have done better because I went to a Legacy challenge later, and I went 3-1 because my deck was like, hey, look, you got turn 1, all day long. It was great. Outside of that, though, the event was a fantastic event. I had a wonderful time. It was nice to just get away for a while, and the weather was beautiful. The flights were great. The people were nice. I met some really, really nice people. It was a good time.
Well, that's good. Glad you had fun.
Yeah.
So we're going to get right into the meat of things this episode. This episode, we're going to be doing our first in our What Is series. Each of these episodes is going to go over some of the major archetypes in constructed Magic. The first one is going to be mine and Danny's favorite archetype, Combo.
Combo Nai. That's plural for combo. It's fantastic. Use it all the time.
Yeah, Combo is just a very fun way to win the game because with a lot of combo decks, you can win out of nowhere, and it's always great to have that feeling.
It's never out of nowhere. You always win. And you only lose to yourself because you don't draw the combo. That's how playing combo works. It feels great when you win, and it feels awful when you are chalice for 1 and go.
So, with combo, there are 3 main categories of combo decks. The first one is the loop. Then we have the engine and the 2-card win. So each of these is a different way of using card synergies and combos. The loop is probably one of the coolest ones because if you are uninterrupted, you're able to infinitely loop a sequence that eventually wins you the game.
Yeah, some of these decks that go alongside that would be Rest in Peace Splinter Twins, Rest in Peace Eggs, Fruity Pebbles, and Cocoa Pebbles from way back in the past, and
way back.
This is technically not a loop deck, but the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Wow, that's a deck, man. That is so cool.
Yeah, so each of these decks kind of have their own infinite loop. For those who have been playing Modern, Splinter Twin was, of course, you would play Splinter Twin, the enchantment, and you would enchant either Deceiver Exarch or Pestermite, which when they enter the battlefield, you untap or tap a permanent, and you would, with Splinter Twin, tap the creature, make a copy of it, untap the one with Splinter Twin on it, and eventually make infinite copies of the original creature that all have haste and swing for lethal.
Yes. One thing to do, make sure that when you're playing a combo deck, don't say infinite. There is a designated number that you should be shooting for. Same with gaining life. There's a couple of decks that do that. Say a number. Make it impossible for your opponent to deal or win through that, but there are outs for other decks. Don't say infinite because I do believe if you say it enough, a judge will have to be called over and you need to demonstrate the loop then.
Yes. Basically, once you can demonstrate an infinite loop that loops the same every single time, you don't need to go through it every single time. You simply need to say, I'm going to do this X number of times.
Yeah, it's just important to make sure you play a number because, Splinter Twin players make infinite. I'm like, all right, well, why don't you just say 100?
Yep, because what if I have Batwing Broom in hand? Lose life equal to the number of attacking creatures you have.
Get wrecked.
One of the coolest pieces of sideboard tech against Splinter Twin.
Or
not a good one, but one of the coolest ones.
It's one of the coolest one. Or my favorite, it's those odds on company players, I'll gain infinite life, and I'm like, no, you can't. They're like, what? I'm like, I have a win con. You need to designate a number. They're like, oh, 1 trillion. I'm like, okay, good. They're like, I'll scry my entire deck. I'm like, I forgot about that part. I'm dead.
Yep. And then, of course, we have eggs, like you mentioned. So eggs would generate a loop where it would Eggs referenced all the artifacts that it could sacrifice for value. So there was Elsewhere Flask, which when you sacrifice it, all your lands become a basic land type of your choice. You've got the various Chromatic Star and Chromatic Sphere, which like you pay a mana, sacrifice it, draw a card, and get a mana to replace it in a way. And it would loop these with Second Sunrise, which is kind of where the deck got its name, its original name of Sunny Side Up.
Yeah, which means eggs. And technically speaking, you could mess up the combo with this one. It's one of those where it's not 100% a good loop, but it's a loop that you need to generate a bunch of mana, you need to tap your mana properly, and if you draw a card or if you do something wrong, it's game over.
Yeah, and it would loop all of this with Pyrite Spellbomb, which when you sacrifice it, you can deal damage to something. I think it was 1 damage, or was it 2 damage?
It's 2 damage.
2 damage. So you would loop it, do Pyrite Spellbomb, Second Sunrise, get all the artifacts that went into your graveyard this turn back onto the field, and then you would put the Second Sunrise back into your library, draw cards again until you hit your Second Sunrise, sack the Pyrite Spellbomb, and play the Second Sunrise, and just keep looping this until your opponent was dead. And this deck was notorious for going way over the normal time limits in matches.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason why I actually got banned. Is it wasn't a consecutive loop. While it could technically be an infinite amount of damage, it needed to draw the pieces, very similar to Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Yeah, 4 Horsemen is a very weird deck, and it's one that you pretty much cannot play in a sanctioned event because you will be called for slow play because of how the deck plays out.
Yeah, which is a little unfortunate because this deck is actually really cool. It just requires too many pieces to be in the right place at the right time.
So 4 Horsemen, it would generate a near infinite loop, but not quite. What it does is it plays 4 copies of Narcomoeba, which is when it's put in your graveyard from your library, you put it onto the battlefield, and it would play the combo of Basalt Monolith, which 3 mana artifact does not untap during your untap step. You can tap it for 3 to add 3 mana, and for 3 mana you can untap it. So you can tap it, use that mana to untap it, and just keep doing that. Then you have Mesmeric Orb, which is a 2 mana artifact. Whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills 1. So you would start tapping and untapping Basalt Monolith to mill 1 card at a time, and hopefully you hit some number of Narcomoebas and Dread Return. Then you would flashback Dread Return to get Sharam the Hegemon onto the battlefield, which when Sharam enters, you return an artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You would return Blasting Station to the battlefield, which says tap, sacrifice a creature, deal 1 damage, and whenever a creature comes into play, you can untap it. Then you would start sacrificing stuff to Blasting Station to deal damage, and you have Emrakul in the deck. And Emrakul is in the deck only because when it hits the graveyard, you shuffle your entire graveyard back in, so you can start the loop over again. And it would generate a non-infinite loop, because sometimes you would have Basalt Monolith and Mesmeric Orb out, and you would just start milling and hit Emrakul. Okay, shuffle it all back in. Let's try again. Okay, I hit 2 Narcomoebas and Emrakul. Let's try it again. Oh, I hit Emrakul before hitting Dread Return. Let's try it again. So, potentially, you could be sitting there spending an hour trying to get the first loop done.
Yeah, it becomes a real disappointing situation, because really what it comes down to is you spend too much time shuffling. You have to shuffle properly, and that's the main problem. You can't shuffle fast. If you shuffle too fast, you either break sleeves, or cards get flown all over the place. It becomes a very hectic situation. And since your only real win con is getting Narcomoebas back on the battlefield to get Blasting Station, doing this 4 times, doing it again, doing it again, it becomes really grindy. And it is slow play. You're demonstrating a loop, but it is also slow play at the same time.
Yeah, it's a loop that... It's not necessarily a loop because it's not the same every single time, although it's close to the same, but you're not changing the board state or changing anything really with the loop if you just keep hitting Emrakul off the top every single time. So it just... too often you would be sitting there for 20 minutes on the killing turn, and your opponent's just like, okay, well, I'm going to take a bathroom break.
Yeah, because it says... right here, actually, in the little page I'm just reading right now, John Santafield, Los Angeles Legacy Open Head Judge, essentially, The game actions are all legal until the Four Horsemen's player hit an Emrakul, upon which the point of the loop is indefinite and is constituted as slow play unless you advance the game state. Layman's terms, there's no full win con right there on the spot.
Yeah, so it was just that's the only reason why you really can't play the deck. It's a cool combo.
It's great.
Yeah. Now, you did mention also Fruity Pebbles, and this is an old combo deck. This goes way back. And Fruity Pebbles, this is a really cool deck because it and we see people trying to like create like new versions of the Fruity Pebbles deck, like kind of trying to do like new changes to it because all the cards are still there. So you've got Goblin Bombardment, which is 2-mana enchantment, sacrifice a creature, deal 1 damage to our creature or player. And you have Enduring Renewal. So this is a weird one. It's 2 white for an enchantment. Play with your hand revealed. If you would draw a card, reveal it. Reveal the top card of your library instead. If it's a creature, you put it in your graveyard. Otherwise, you draw it. So basically, all creatures go to your graveyard instead of into your hand, in a sense. Then it also says, whenever a creature is put into your graveyard from play, you return that creature to your hand. Then you loop this with 0-mana creatures. So it's like you play creature for 0 mana, sacrifice a Goblin Bombardment, deal 1 damage, Enduring Renewal puts it back into your hand. Do it again, and you just keep going until your opponent's dead.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It really is.
Yep.
It's definitely an old school thing. Like you look at these cards, and it's like, oh look, Mox Ruby or Mox Diamond, Demonic Consultation, Dark Ritual. Oh look, Mana Vault.
Oh look, Shield Sphere.
Yeah, Shield Sphere and Phyrexian Walker. This isn't right.
Yeah, it was a weird deck, but it got there a lot of the time, and it was really cool. And then you had Cocoa Pebbles was kind of the remix version of it, which instead of playing blue for counterspells, it played black for Duress and Necropotence.
Oh boy, Necropotence! What a R&D bust.
Yeah, so Necropotence would basically let you just fill up your hand at the end of your turn, and then just on your next turn, oh, look at this, I have a 12-card hand. I have all my combo pieces. Yeah, really good. But we do have some current examples of decks that use a loop. We've got in Legacy, you've got the Painter Servant decks, which play Painter Servant, makes all cards in all zones a color of your choice, and then Grindstone, which it mills 2, and then if those cards share a color, it does it again, and again, and again. And since everything is the same color, you play Painter Servant and you name red. All cards in all zones are now red. Grindstone sees it mill 2 red cards and does it again, and it just infinite loops this mill till your opponent's out of cards.
Yeah, and the only real bad matchup for them is a Show and Tell deck where they run Emrakul because they can't kill him that way.
Yeah, it kind of folds to Emrakul decks.
Yep, and it's really funny because like you'll see a painter deck come in, they'll sit down right next to the Show and Tell player, and they'll just be like, okay, sure. And then, like, they flip the Emrakul over, and they'll go scoop it up.
Scoop it up, sign the match slip. No.
It's not, like, instant all over either.
Oh, yeah.
They do have some outs. Thanks to Duretti. Like, he's actually really, really good for that deck now.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But, you know, I digress. It's just comical because each matchup, especially in Legacy, there's just, like, auto wins and auto loses.
It does happen from time to time. We do also have another Legacy deck, Food Chain, and this one's fun because it used a card that no one really knew what to do with when it came out, Mist Hollow Griffin.
Yeah, this is a really weird card. If I'm not reading off the top of my head. I'm reading this off the top of my head. It's a blue 2 flyer that's a 2/2 or a 4/4.
I believe it's a 2/2.
Okay,
the
it's a 2/2.
4/4 flyer would have seen play a lot more.
It might be a 2/2, even a 3/3 at this point.
No, it's a 3/3. Yeah, it's a 3/3.
Okay, at 3/3, it's still fine value. It's a mythic, and it reads, you can cast this from exile. Mm-hmm. That's all it reads. So you look at this card, and you're just like, well, we're in Innistrad, original Innistrad. What do I do with this card? And it never saw play. Yeah, and then somebody in Legacy's like, yo, I'm going to bust this stuff. And they did it.
Yeah, so you've got Food Chain, which is an enchantment, which is exile a creature, and then you add its converted mana cost +1 in any color, but you can only use it to cast creatures. Now, because you exiled Misthallow Griffin, you go, okay, exile Misthallow Griffin, generate 5 mana. Play Misthallow Griffin. Exile Misthallow Griffin, generate 5 mana. And you just keep doing it, and you just generate infinite mana that way.
Yeah, it becomes an infinite mana, then you just slam down your Emrakul, take a turn, and kill your opponent.
Yep. Emrakul wins games. You've also got, in Modern, we've got a couple of decks that use infinite loops. We've got the Abzan or Junk Chord and Kiki Chord decks, which both use Chord of Calling to search up the combo pieces, which are all creatures. And Kiki Chord is basically the Splinter Twin combo again, but it uses slightly different pieces. Kiki Chord uses Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker, which is a 2 red 2/2 with haste, and tap copy target non-legendary creature and give that copy haste. And Restoration Angel, which 3 and a white 3/4 flyer, when it enters, exile target non-angel and return it to the battlefield. So you would go tap Kiki, copy Restoration Angel, flicker Kiki, he comes in untapped, do it again, and swing with a bunch of 3/4 flyers.
Yeah, it's actually really, really cool that this kind of combo happens. It's very resilient. I think it's more resilient than what Twin was. It's just Twin had blue as a consistent thing.
Mm-hmm.
But these Naya Kiki deck or Abzan Chord they're just so powerful. They are very powerful, very consistent, and there's just sometimes where like the Abzan Chord deck is like turn 1 Visasir, turn 2 Malira, turn 3
Kitchen Finks, yeah.
Kitchen Finks, sorry, oops. So yeah, it's just like, hey, I represent infinite on turn 3. That's insane, you know?
Oh yeah. And then we've got one of my favorite combo decks in Modern, which does not see very much play at all, and that's Pyromancer Ascension combo, or Unstorm, it's called, because it looks like Storm, but it's not Storm.
It's almost Storm.
It's almost Storm, which it's got one of the weirdest infinite loops. You need... so Pyromancer Ascension is an enchantment for 1 and a red. When you cast an instant or sorcery with the same name as one in your graveyard, you can put a quest counter on it. And when you cast an instant or sorcery, if Pyromancer Ascension has 2 or more quest counters on it, you can make a copy of that spell. Then you have Manamorphose, 1 and hybrid red-green. Add 2 mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool and draw a card. And Noxious Revival, which was a green Phyrexian mana, so you can pay green or 2 life. Put target card from your graveyard on top of your library. So you have an active Pyromancer Ascension, you have 1 copy of each of those other spells in your hand, 1 copy of each in your graveyard. You go, cast Noxious Revival, get a copy, put on top of my library, Noxious Revival, Manamorphose. Then, cast Manamorphose, generate 4 mana, draw 2 cards. And the loop itself only casts 3 mana, so you just start going Noxious Revival, Manamorphose, Noxious Revival, Manamorphose, generate infinite mana. Then you just start looping Noxious Revival and cantrips to draw the rest of your deck. Then you just start looping Noxious Revival and Lightning Bolts to kill your opponent. So it's a very interesting infinite loop that you can get going there.
Yeah, it's definitely different. And you can run a 1 of Grape Shot, just that way you can deal the 20 instead of having to go the long way home, you know?
But the long way's fun.
Long way is fun, but man, there's times where you're just like, oops, I made a mistake.
Yep.
So
after the loop, we do have our engine decks. These are decks that generate value off of a recurring but non-infinite engine, and this value can be in the form of mana, extra life that you're gaining, just more damage, drawing cards, or even storm decks fit into this.
Yes, just like I was saying earlier, where I was playing my storm deck. Storm is a special type of deck where they use the broken mechanic and what Mark Rosewater uses as the storm meter on how powerful the card is. Storm is a mechanic that makes a copy of the spell with storm on it for each spell that you cast that turn.
For each spell anyone has cast that turn, actually.
Yes. My apologies for everybody, because sometimes I forget that. You know, you force a will. It's like, oh, great, you killed yourself.
So we do have a few historic decks that use an engine, and we have, as a good example, probably the first big combo deck, which was Prosbloom, and this was a really nice deck here.
It's definitely an old deck, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely an old deck. So its engine was this card Cadaverous Bloom, which is an enchantment for 3 black green, and it reads: exile a card from your hand and add black black or green green to your mana pool. You would exile cards from your hand, and then you cast Prosperity. X and a blue sorcery, each player draws X cards. So basically every card that you exile from your hand draws you 2 cards. And you do this until you have a whole bunch of cards in your hand, then you generate a whole bunch of black mana, and you play Drain Life, which is X1 black, and target player loses X life, and you gain X life, but you can only spend black mana this way. So, Prosperity would just draw you into as many cards as you needed, and you just use Cadaverous Bloom gets you more mana. And there were some other really interesting little engines in the deck that only worked because of the rules at the time.
Yeah, there's some really old rules that don't make a lot of sense nowadays, but back then we're just like, hey, this is a new game, we can do whatever we want.
Yep. Interesting thing there is you had Infernal Contract in the deck, black, 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 sorcery, draw 4 cards, lose half your life rounded up. Back in the day, a person would not lose the game for being at 0 life until the end of a phase. So let's say it's your main phase, and you're at 1 life. You cast Infernal Contract, draw 4 cards, put yourself at 0. You still haven't lost the game. Then you just use the 4 cards you just drew to proceed with your engine and drain life your opponent. Now your opponent's at 0, and you have more than 0 life, and you go to the end of my main phase. You lose. It's a very weird time.
Yeah, because then it's on the stack, and you're just like, I'll gain 3 life, and it's like,
Yeah, it is. It was a very weird time. You also have Birthing Pod is a more recent example, and that was a modern deck. Birthing Pod is kind of the grandfather of the Junk Chord deck, whereas Junk Chord, you have to make sure you have enough creatures out so you can cast Chord of Calling. Birthing Pod was, I believe it was 3 and a Phyrexian green mana for an artifact, and then it was 1 and a Phyrexian green mana tap, sacrifice a creature, search your library for a creature with that creature's converting mana cost +1, and put it into play. So you could just use that to find the other pieces.
It's nice when your deck just managed to work out so damn well together.
Birthing Pod decks just built themselves.
Yeah, they literally built themselves. It's like, okay, I will just go 1, 2, 3, 4, call it a day. You lose.
Yeah, and then the deck could still just Birthing Pod for Siege Rhino. That was dumb.
Dark days.
And that card's banned for good reason. But we do have a few examples that are available right now for you to play. You've got the Storm variants, both in Modern and in Legacy. You've got High Tide, which is kind of a Storm deck, but its engine is different. Instead of using rituals and fast mana, it uses, as we discussed when we featured my blue-green version, High Tide and spells that untap your lands.
Yeah, it's more of a gain a bajillion mana, mill your opponent for a bajillion.
Yeah, and it could use Storm, but mostly Blue Sun Zenith was the win in the High Tide lists.
It's easier.
It's much easier for that deck. You've also got Elves in Modern and Legacy, which basically just play a whole bunch of Elves, draw a whole bunch of cards because you're playing Elves, generate a whole bunch of mana because you're playing Elves, and then play Craterhoof Behemoth and hit you for a whole bunch.
Because you're Elves.
And then we've got the Jeskai Ascendancy combo decks in Modern, where you're playing Jeskai Ascendancy. I mentioned it last week when I was talking about the deck that I played last Standard, but it was a blue, red, white for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can untap all creatures you control and give them +1/+1. Then you can also draw a card, and if you do, you discard a card. So you're using Jeskai Ascendancy, cheap spells, and creatures that generate mana, or you had Fate Stitcher, and so he's basically another way to generate mana because he has tap, untap target permanent. So you would tap him, untap a land, Jeskai Ascendancy trigger untaps him, and just generate a whole bunch of mana, and all your creatures gain a whole bunch of power and toughness, and you just swing with a whole bunch of Birds of Paradise.
Yeah, because at the same time, Fate Stitcher also taps down your opponent's stuff as well, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. That was always good to get blockers out of the way.
Yep. That was a deck, man. That was a deck. I love that.
It's a sweet deck. I love watching it in play.
It's so good. It's definitely a difficult one to play. But do yourself a favor, go look it up. It is go find somebody that played on like YouTube or something. It's a blast. It really is.
It just like you just play Birds of Paradise the first couple turns, and then you just go, okay, enchantment, spell. I love it.
Somehow infinite damage bird.
Yeah. Then the last variant of combo that we have is the 2-card win. I couldn't come up with a good, clever name for it, so it's the 2-card win style of deck. These are the cards that usually use just a really strong interaction between two specific cards to either win the game on the spot or just gain a whole bunch of value.
Some of these decks that are in the past are Channel Fireball, not the website, but legitimately Channel Fireball.
That's where they got their name. It's one of the classic combos. You've got Channel, green, until end of turn. You can pay 1 life to add 1 mana to your mana pool. You use that. You add some fast mana to your deck, like rituals or stuff like Lotus Petal or back in the day Black Lotus. And then you would play Fireball, X and a red, deal X damage. So you would just go Channel, pay 19 life, add another couple mana, 20 damage to you.
Woo! We did it, team.
We did it. Then you've also got Time Vault and Voltaic Key. So Time Vault would
enter the battlefield tapped.
And the battlefield tapped, does not untap during your untap step, and you can skip a turn to untap it, and if you tap it, you take an extra turn. But then
seems reasonable.
Seems like an okay card. You store a turn for later. But then you have Voltaic Key comes in. Yeah, so Voltaic Key was just a 1 mana tap, untap target artifact. So instead of paying a turn to get a turn, you're paying 1 mana to get a turn. It's just such a dumb combo.
It's great. It's very dumb, but it's great.
Yeah, just gain infinite turns for 1 mana every turn.
Yeah, and then you play like a Merfolk of the Pearl Trident, just the 1/1, and you beat your opponent in on turn 1, and it's great.
No, you play a Stormcrow. You win with Stormcrow. That's the only way you win with that combo.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, we'll do Stormcrow.
Yep. Then we did have a couple other 2-card win decks. Tricks. That was a fun one. Like Fruity Pebbles, this was a time where you had really weird deck names, and people like naming their decks after breakfast cereals.
Yeah, it just seemed to go hand in hand, but this deck is like... Man, when we were talking about combo, this is one of the decks I wanted to bring up a lot. It's great.
Oh, it's so good. It was a really cool combo, because you had Illusions of Grandeur, which is a weird one. It's an enchantment for 3 and a blue with cumulative upkeep 2. So that means every upkeep, you pay its cumulative upkeep for the number of age counters that are on it, and you put an age counter on it. So the turn after you play it, you pay 2 mana. The turn after that, you pay 4 mana. The turn after that, you pay 6 mana, so on and so forth. Eventually, you just can't keep it on the battlefield. But it reads, when it enters play, you gain 20 life. And when it leaves play... Yeah, pretty simple. And when it leaves play, you lose 20 life.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good way to stop aggro for a little bit, but then you've got the kicker in the deck. Donate.
Donate's great. It's exactly what you think it is. You take one of your permanents, and you give it to your opponent. That's all you really do.
Yeah, you basically say to your opponent, I'd rather not lose 20 life when this goes away. Let's have you lose 20 life.
Exactly. So what you do is you donate it, you give it to your opponent, you pass turn, and what happens is they can't pay it because they can't generate infinite mana. So they just lose the game because it goes away and they lose 20 life. Hey, we did it.
Very interesting way to kill your opponent.
It's definitely the coolest way to kill your opponent. Just give your opponent the win con and call it a day.
Oh, yeah. Really fun. And then we have Broken Jar, and this deck... if you're wondering why Memory Jar is the only card that was emergency banned, this is the reason why. So this deck would play Memory Jar, which is 5 mana for an artifact, tap, sacrifice. Each player exiles their hand face down and draws 7 cards. At the beginning of the end step, each player discards their current hand and returns to their hand all cards exiled by Memory Jar.
Seems basic enough. Yeah. Seems pretty good.
Yeah. So what Broken Jar would do is it used fast mana and ways to draw cards to find multiple memory jars, play multiple memory jars, and then just start cracking them and go, okay, crack a memory jar, exile your cards, draw 7. Crack a memory jar, exile your cards, draw 7, and just keep doing this, and then it would play the one of Megrim, which is an enchantment, 2 and a black. Whenever an opponent discards a card, they take 2 damage.
Yep, and so what you do is just your opponent draw, 7 cards each time through memory jar. 7 times 4 is too many, and they're dead.
Yeah, so you're just like, okay, crack all my memory jars, Megrim, go to end step, discard your hand, then discard your hand, then discard your hand, then discard your hand. Oh, you're dead.
Oh wait, you're more than dead. Good,
yeah.
Next game.
Yep, and then another deck which caused banning was the Legacy Hulk Flash deck, or Flash Hulk deck, sorry. This deck.
I never saw it in action. Sorry, and to cut you off there. I never saw it in action, but people talk about it like it's a big deal, and it's after doing a little research, I definitely understand why.
Yeah, so Flash Hulk, and we're seeing a bit of a resurgence in a deck that is legal called Bubble Hulk in Modern, but Flash Hulk would play a card called Flash, which was a really weird blue spell. 1 in a blue instant. Choose a creature card from your hand and put it into play as though you just played it. Pay its casting cost reduced by 2. If you can't, you sacrifice it. So when this card came out all the way back in Mirage, no one really knew what to do with it because it was kind of like, okay, well, I get the creature, but then it just dies. I don't really get anything out of it.
Yeah, this is also back in the day where every card really had a deeper meaning.
Yep. But then you've got Protean Hulk. A 7 mana creature. So keep in mind, Flash says you can put it into play and then sacrifice it. It's a 6/6, but when it dies, you can search your library for any number of creature cards with total converted mana cost 6 or less and put them into play. So for 2 mana, you find all your combo pieces and put them into play.
It's super sweet.
It's a disgusting deck because you would search up a combination of creatures that eventually, after looping a few times, would get you Kiki Jiki and Karmic Guide. So this was very similar to the Kiki Jiki Restoration Angel combo that I mentioned earlier. But Karmic Guide is a 2/2, and you would just create an infinite number of Karmic Guides and attack in.
It's great. It's just more great. Combo makes me happy.
Yeah, it's just more combo. But then we have, like Flash Hulk itself is banned. Flash is just banned. It's a stupid card. But current examples that use this 2-card win formula is Bubble Hulk, which is the new version of it. So instead of using Flash, you're using Footsteps of the Goryo, which is a 3-mana sorcery. Return a creature card from your graveyard to play and sacrifice at end of turn. So this still cheats Protean Hulk out, but you need to set it up a little bit first.
Yep, and it's all from the same set of Kamigawa block because Kamigawa block was weird.
Kamigawa block, it was a weird set because there are some standout cards that are just insane. A lot of the pieces of combo decks that we mentioned, Kiki Jiki, Protean Hulk, these things came from Kamigawa block. But there are so many things from Kamigawa block that just don't see play.
Yeah, just these kind of decks exist because of Kamigawa, and I think Protean Hulk was from Ravnica, but I could be wrong.
Oh yes, you're right. It was. It just looks like it's just sitting next to the Kamigawa card, so I got confused, and I'm just so used to seeing broken cards from Kamigawa. Let's just leave it at that.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. We do have other 2-card win decks, like Show and Tell is a very classic one from Legacy that always sees play.
Yeah, Sneak and Show is great.
Yep, just 3 mana, put an Emrakul into play.
Or just instantly lose. That's pretty much the way it works.
Yep, you've also got Goblin Charbelcher decks, which, technically they're 1-card win decks, but I put them in this category because the quote-unquote second card of the combo is the fast mana that you need to be able to play your Goblin Charbelcher and activate it.
So Goblin Charge Belcher is, I believe it's a 4-drop, right?
Yeah, it's a 4-drop, and then you pay 3 to activate it.
Yeah, you pay 3 to activate, you tap it, you reveal the top card of your library until you hit a land. For each card that you reveal, you deal 1 damage, I believe. And then it's, if you hit a mountain, you double it. So what you do is you just flip over a bunch of cards so you hit your 1 of mountain, or your taiga, whatever it is, and you just kill your opponent.
Yeah, you just do a whole bunch of damage. It usually plays like just 1 land, just the 1 mountain.
Yep, it runs 1 taiga, and I think they sideboard in 1 more land sometimes, just so that way they can get it.
Yep. The Goblin Charge Belcher itself is the combo, but like as I was saying, the second card is all the fast mana because it's so necessary to play Goblin Charge Belcher because of that 1 land.
Yes.
So now with the different versions of combo, we do have the deck that's around your combo. There's a couple different ways you can go about it. I mean, you've got your all-in style of decks, and this is like Goblin Charge Belcher is a good example of this. These decks play. They typically play as many of the combo pieces as they possibly can, and just power their way to it as fast as they can. And because of this, they're usually really fast. They can go off very early, but they're pretty fragile to disruption.
Yes, cards like, what is it, Leyline of Sanctity, or cards like Lay on the Void, or Rest in Peace, these combo-based decks that are in the graveyard, or targeting your opponent, or even just like Chalice of the Void on 1. Like, those are extremely fragile decks that just auto-lose to it, but they're also the more explosive decks that just really do a lot of work.
Yeah, and this usually works best with a loop or engine style combo, just because loop or engine style combos are usually set up so there are multiple pieces that kind of work in the same fashion. So that helps you with your all-in style. It makes it more likely that you'll have all the pieces early on. So, notable examples are Char Belcher decks. Storm decks fit into this category because they are, kind of all in on the Storm plan.
Yeah, and all in on the Storm plan is the right plan to be on.
Mm-hmm. Now, we do also have our combo control variants. These support the game-winning combo with control elements. This could include counter spells. This could include, just a lot of hand disruption. I mean, Storm itself uses some, but not as much as control combo decks do. And this deck usually waits to play its combo until it has protection available or it knows that it won't be interrupted.
Yeah, Sneaky Show is actually a deck that does that. It's a deck that's all about permission, and then when I play my permission spells, or when I play my combo, I hope to have the permission to back it up.
Yep, and usually this is built around a strong 2-card win style of combo. So like you said, Sneak and Show. Scape Shift fits into this as well. High Tide is an engine deck that fits into this category because unlike the other Storm decks, it's more of a control deck that waits until the last possible moment to go off, as we said when we went over it a couple episodes ago.
Yes.
Then we do have our value style combo decks, and these are decks that have ways to gain value off of their combo pieces without actually doing the combo, and the combo's just there as an I win button.
Yep, these are decks that are pretty straightforward. They just play a bunch of good, valuable creatures, value spells, and things like that, and we'll just either kill you via the ground or just casting a good number of spells.
Mm-hmm. These are usually built around the engine combos or the 2-card win combos are sometimes in these. But there are times where you will implement a loop in there if the value doesn't work. So, I mean, you've got the various Court of Calling decks, both junk and the Kiki Jiki versions. Elves kind of fits into the value style deck because, if your plan of drawing into Craterhoof Behemoth, playing it, and attacking you for a whole bunch doesn't work, let's say you don't draw your Craterhoof Behemoth, you can still attack them with a whole bunch of elves.
And little green men are awesome.
Oh, little green men just get there sometimes.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. And then the Unstorm deck that I mentioned earlier, if you don't get the pieces to generate your infinite loop, you're still playing Pyromancer's Ascension, you can still just go, okay, Pyromancer Ascension, here's like some cantrips, and then Lightning Bolt you. That's 3 copies of Lightning Bolt to your face for 1 mana.
I love it.
Yeah, so I mean, there's still stuff you can do in these value decks outside of the combo, but using your combo pieces. So if you draw 1 piece, you can possibly win the game before you draw your other one. Now, within the deck, you do want to have stuff that helps you get to your combo. So you're going to want a lot of spells that draw cards or that help you select cards from whatever amount of your deck. So this could be anything from cantrips like Ponder, Preordain, Cataxian Probe, or things that let you kind of set up the top of your deck, or just dig faster like Faithless Looting.
Yes.
Any of those are just really good to find your combo pieces, and which ones you use will depend on how your combo interacts with the rest of your deck. Like, do you care about more pieces towards the combo? Do you need specific things in the graveyard? If that's the case, you may want to play Faithless Looting. And then if there are any tutors or any wishes that are legal in your format, those are cards that are very strong, and you probably want to find a way to use them.
Yeah, the tutor spells, like seriously, Infernal Tutor, Burning Wish, Living Wish, these other like we talked about in the past already. Like, tutors are great. They're powerful. They're great. I love them to death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you've also got fast mana, which we've been talking about throughout the episode, and fast mana is just ways that you can generate more mana than you usually have for that turn. So under normal circumstances, turn 1 you have 1 mana, turn 2 you have 2 mana. But with fast mana cards, you can potentially have as much mana as you want on turn 1. So
yeah, it becomes really scary really quickly for your opponent. Like,
yeah.
Dark Ritual is a powerful card. Don't be afraid not to use it, you know?
Oh yeah, Dark Ritual is very good if you're a combo deck that's either based in black or, doesn't care about its colors. If you're in Modern, you've got Desperate Ritual, fits into that slot as well. And then you've got Artifact Mana, which consists of stuff like Lion's Eye Diamond, Lotus Petal, Mox Diamond. So you have a bunch of different options for your fast mana, and it all depends on what your deck needs the most. So before we go into the featured decks for this episode, I just want to give a quick shout out to our main sponsor, Pro Play Games. We talk about them every week, but this is a shop down in West Palm Beach, and they've been putting together some really big stuff lately. I was checking out their website recently, and they do run events for other card games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And they just acquired a couple of guys for their international Yu-Gi-Oh! Team, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, even though the Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't, it's kind of laughed about in Magic and stuff like that, it's still a very big game. Like, lots of people are playing it. It's international, and the fact that they got people going worldwide playing this game, shout out to them, and shout out to those players too.
I'm really excited to see what happens with Pro Play in the future, see how their Magic team shapes up. If you guys want to check them out, we're going to have links in the description. Just go to pro-playgames.com. So the first deck we have up is the modern deck, Scapeshift, or sometimes known as Valakut. So this is a classic combo control deck. It uses a 2-card win style of combo, and that consists of Scapeshift and Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. And this is a really neat combo. This is kind of the deck that I first wanted to play in Modern. I've since moved on to other decks, but this will always have a small special place in my heart. So you've got Scapeshift, 2 green, sacrifice any number of lands, search your library for that many lands, and put them on the battlefield tapped. Then you've got Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, which is usually one of the lands that you're going to grab with Scapeshift. I actually can't really think of too many instances where you wouldn't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a land, enters the battlefield taps a red mana, but whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, if you control at least 5 other mountains, Valakut deals 3 damage to target creature or player.
It's pretty good because you just change all your lands for mountains and just kill your opponent like super fast.
Yeah, like with Scapeshift, you need at least 7 lands to activate Valakut. So you have 7 lands out, you cast Scapeshift, you grab Valakut and 6 mountains. So all the mountains enter at once. Valakut sees all of them enter, and sees, okay, there were 5 other mountains in play when these entered, so I'm going to deal 18 damage to something.
Yeah, it's definitely an oddity where triggers on the stack are like actually really important for decks like this.
Yeah, it's a very interesting deck. Now there are a couple of variations on this one. You've got the Rug Scape Shift or Teamer Scape Shift, whichever way to name the color you want. And this plays blue alongside red and green to back up your Scape Shift with counter spells. So you have access to Remand and Cryptic Command. And this is kind of the classic version of Scape Shift.
Yeah, it's definitely the control one. It's got better win cons. It's not as explosive, but it has consistency and inevitability. Yeah, I can't say words.
Yeah, because of the counter spells, and then you also get access to blue cantrips. You do have a bit of consistency and some protection for your combo, and then you do have a nice little benefit of you could set up your sideboard so you can transform into kind of a rug control deck. You can play stuff like Karanos God of Storms. You can play Inferno Titans as your finishers. So it's a really nice version of the deck if you want that option. So we do have a red-green version of the deck, and one of the players who was playing this at the SEG Invitational made the top 8, and this one's kind of instead of playing counterspells, you just play more copies of Valakut, and you play Primeval Titan just to give yourself consistency and just have better inevitability.
It just crushes. It's great.
Mm-hmm. And then the great thing about this deck is it's kind of like the like a value style combo deck because it can just win without the Scape Shift. You just get Primeval Titan into play and just every turn get 2 mountains into play, deal 6 damage, and you attack them with Primeval Titan. Then we do have the Bring to Light version, and this uses Bring to Light from the Battle for Zendikar set. So this is 3 green-blue sorcery with Converge. Search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of colors spent on Bring to Light. Exile that card, then shuffle your library. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So if you can pay 4 colors into Bring to Light, that's Scape Shift.
Yep.
Yep, it basically gives you, instead of just 4 copies of Scape Shift, you can play 7 or 8 copies of Scape Shift in a way.
It's great.
Yeah, and Bring to Light's good because you get to play more one-ofs in the deck. There's a lot of versions of the deck that play, 1 copy of Damnation so that they can wipe the board. You've got a bunch of sideboard cards like Crumble to Dust, Anger of the Gods, Maelstrom Pulse, Slaughter Games. So you get a lot of options and flexibility. And you get to play probably my favorite instant that doesn't get enough love in the modern format, Worldly Council.
Worldly Council. God.
It's an interesting card. It's 1 and a blue for an instant with Domain, which was a weird keyword ability word. So it's look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Put 1 into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library. So in the Bring to Light Scape Shift decks, this is basically like you're playing Impulse, which is a strong card in Legacy, to put it into perspective.
Yeah, look at the top 4, take 1, call it a day. It's great.
Yep, and Bring to Light does also have the advantage of being able to play alternate win conditions. I mean, I'm looking at one specific list here that has an Olivia Voldaren in the sideboard, which Olivia Voldaren is usually the game-winning card for Jund, but this is a combo deck. So sometimes, you realize you might not be able to get there with the combo, so you just search up Olivia Voldaren and start beating them in the face with a 3/3 flyer, and just make her bigger every turn.
And it's always great to have that, honestly.
Yeah. Now, the deck itself, regardless of the version, is kind of a hybrid of, ramp and combo. So, I mean, your ramp, because the kill itself needs at least 7 lands to go, like for Valakut to turn on. So you need ways to get these lands onto the battlefield. A lot of them will play Search for Tomorrow, 2 and a green, with Suspend 2 for green. Search your library for a basic land card, put it into play, shuffle your library. And Sakura Tribe Elder. 1 and a green for a 1/1 creature, sacrifice Sakura Tribe Elder, search your library for a basic land, put it into play. So you just spend your first 2 or 3 turns, searching for lands, putting lands on the battlefield. Then turn 4 or 5, you just go, Scape Shift. Now I have 7 lands in play.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and one thing I really like is the red-green versions have been playing Colony Heart Expedition, which is a really good in this style of deck that wants to ramp out the number of lands it has. It's an enchantment for 1 and a green with landfall. Whenever a land enters, you can put a quest counter on it. Then you can remove 3 quest counters and sacrifice it. Search your library for 2 basic lands. Yeah.
Simple ramp. Simple ramp is great. Like, this is what the deck's about. You're ramping into your win con.
And with the 2 lands, you can use this as basically like a slightly slower but more value-oriented Soccer Tribe Elder. Or later on in the game, when you have a Valakut and enough lands, it just, does 6 damage.
That's sometimes all you need, honestly, when it comes down to kind of decks.
Yeah, now the one important thing with Scapeshift, if you choose to play this deck, is you need to make sure you know how many mountains you have in the deck. Because you need to have at least 6 mountains left in your deck when you cast Scapeshift. It's very important to keep count of how many there are. You are allowed in tournaments to bring notes with you on your deck, like on a sheet of paper in your deck box. So it's probably a good idea if you're playing Scapeshift, write down on those notes, I have so-and-so number of mountains in my deck.
Yeah, or just tally them. Sometimes that's all you need to do, because you don't want your opponent to look over, because technically it's open information. Mm-hmm. Whatever you write down. So if you just tally it, it's something for you to know. Your opponent may not pick it up. It's important.
Yeah. So you do have to keep that in mind. I have seen games of Scapeshift where they didn't have enough mountains in their deck, but the guy held on to a couple of extra copies of Lightning Bolt and then goes, Scapeshift. Scapeshift, float a couple of red mana. Everything comes into play. Deal 18 to you, and he was still at like a few life, and then, okay, using the red mana, Lightning Bolt.
Got him.
Yep, so you do have to keep in mind that sometimes you need to, hold on to those Lightning Bolts instead of using them as removal here and there. Now, the other deck that we want to talk about, and this is a really good one. This is one that Danny actually knows quite a bit about because he's played it for quite a while. This is the Legacy deck, the Epic Storm.
Yes, the Epic Storm, or Tess as I'm going to refer it from here on out, it's a different variation of Storm. There's 2 variations of Storm in Legacy. There is Ant, which is Ad Nauseam Tendrils, and there's the Epic Storm, which is Tess. Basically, Brian Cook is an innovator of this deck, and he consistently posts on it. He has a website. It's theepicstorm.com. If you look it up, it will show you everything you need to know about this deck. It is fantastic. It'll show you the real win cons, and it goes really in depth to a degree that I can't do in such a short period of time. But with this being said, instead of using Tendrils of Agony as our win con, we're using Empty the Warrens as a faster win con, and we also have access to Ad Nauseam itself in order to get, or to be able to use Ad Nauseam to get our win con on turn 1 more consistently. The difference between Ant and Storm, or Ant and Tess, is probably a turn and a half difference.
Yeah, I'd say it's about a turn and a half in Epic Storm's favor. And one thing that's actually very interesting, and I remember when I was watching you play the deck on South Florida Magic's stream, despite the names, Ad Nauseam Tendrils is a Past in Flames deck, and the Epic Storm is an Ad Nauseam deck. Those are their main engines.
Yes. But what makes the Epic Storm different from Ant is that we're running a Grixis more than we are splashing for Grixis. With this being said, we're running cards like Burning Wish, Rite of Flames, Chrome Mox, Lotus Petals, LEDs, and a couple of mountains, which would be Badlands and Volcanic Islands, so that way we can use our Empty the Warrens or Burning Wishes to go to our sideboard. And like we talked about Burning Wish earlier in one of our episodes, we have a sideboard hate that we got going on. Brian Cook's current list is running 2 Thoughtseize, 1 Void Snare, 1 Grape Shot, 1 Empty the Warrens, 1 Passive Flames, 1 Tendrils of Agony, and 1 Dark Petition. Boy, I'm telling you what, Dark Petition is a card, and people that were giving it crap when it first came out, shame on you. That is a card. That is a good card.
Dark Petition's a great card. I mean, for 5 mana, you just staple Demonic Tutor and Dark Ritual together. It's just a good card.
Yeah, it's a fantastic card, and what we're really trying to do is we're either trying to get Ad Nauseam at a really quick pace, or we're going to try to do a big storm of about like 7 to 8, where we normally have to wait one more turn for Ant to just empty the warrens on turn 1 and pass turn. With this being said, decks like Jun or decks that run Engineer Explosives or things like that are just very, very scary. But this is why we also run Gitaxian Probe plus Cabal Therapy, which is a fantastic combo in itself. And we also run Duress to help get information on our opponent. Because sometimes it's all it really requires is just have 1 mana. Like, just take a look, and if you're in the clear, you jam it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those decks where having that little bit of information that Gitaxian Probes gives you just gives you so much. Because you really do need to know, is the way clear?
Yeah, and normally, at least for me, it takes me a little while to put the pieces together. So, kind of if you're versing a Storm player, give them a moment, look over the cards, let them write it down, let them figure it out. Just give them a moment, because they're either going to kill you or they're just going to pass turn and hope to kill you the next turn. Like, that's just really what's going to happen. If they're in the tank, that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the biggest things with this deck, with what we were talking about earlier in the episode, this deck does play like a good number of cantrips. You've got 12 cantrips in 4 Brainstorm, 4 Ponder, 4 Gitaxian Probe, but it plays a lot of fast mana. I mean, looking at Bryant Cook's list right now, he's got 19 pieces of fast mana.
That makes me so happy. And the best part about all this is the reason why we're running cheap fast mana is not only because it's great for us and we can just explosively kill on turn 1, but when we Ad Nauseam, we also have enough mana floating that 1 mana is all we really need floating on multiple sides.
Mm-hmm. And the great thing with the fast mana, because of how cheap it is, and I've watched you playing the deck, when you Ad Nauseam in Epic Storm, you just start flipping over cards from the top of your deck, and you just start counting backwards from your current life total based on what cards you flip. So I just see Danny, like, he's at 15 life, and he goes, okay, start flipping cards. 15, 15, 15, 15, 15, 14, 15, like 14, 14, 14, 12, 12, 12. And he just draws like 20 cards.
Yeah, and if you can't kill your opponent after drawing 20 cards, I don't know what you're doing. You're doing something wrong.
Yeah, and it's really nice because with all the fast mana, it just makes Ad Nauseam so powerful in this deck.
Yeah, it's the best card advantage card out there, I would say. Mm-hmm. So we're also running 4 Burning Wishes and 4 Infernal Tutors, so that way we can grab the pieces that we're looking for. Burning Wish allows us to go to our sideboard, which allows us to grab Dark Petition, which allows us to grab Infernal Tutor, which allows us to go to get Burning Wish again, which allows us to go get Tendrils of Agony. With that being said, that's 4 to 5 pieces of Storm. All you need is a couple pieces of mana generation, and bam, you got it.
Yep, it's like you're wishing for more wishes again.
Yeah, I know I'm talking a little quickly, but this deck really... Man, if you have an opportunity to play this deck, sit down, proxy it up, just do it. Because you'll be surprised at how many times you get to kill on turn 1. Or even just the whole Gitaxian Probe to Cabal Therapy. Like, knowing what's in their hand, taking the best cards from their hand. It's so good.
It's also great in like smaller events where you don't know what deck you're against. You just draw your opening hand, you see Gitaxian Probe sitting there, you're feeling happy because now you know what you're up against.
Yeah, you're just like, this is great. I know what's going on. I don't have to worry. Bigger events are no longer scary.
Yeah, it's because that's the biggest thing. Legacy is such a huge format that you could be up against anyone. You could be up against Aloran for all you know.
Exactly. You just don't know what you're versing, and Gitaxian Probe just cheats your way into that. And it also counts as Storm, which is great.
That it does. So that about does it for this week's episode. We're going to be having more of these in the future, covering the other major archetypes, stuff like aggro, control. But we hope that this gave you guys a really good look into what combo is like and how to go about putting together a combo deck of your own.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly recommend that if you don't know what you want to play in Magic and you want to do something absolutely crazy and nuts, look into a combo deck. You take the game in such a perspective that's so different, and it's just delightful. It really is.
That does it for our show this week. We'll see you guys next Friday.